Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this lecture we'll be dealing with ethical issues in international relations and funding. So this is quite a very important topic because one question will definitely or usually comes from this topic for the mains exam. So it's better we know about this topic and able to understand the topic. So let's start. So in this lecture, we'll be learning about the ethical issues in international relation, different perspectives, dimensions, importance, failure of international morality, different examples, way forward, and the international funding. So let's get into the lecture. So what does ethical issue in international relation mean? See, it's an area of international relation which concerns the extent and scope of ethical obligations between countries. Like India did Operation Sindhu recently. Like it's an ethical obligation. Like we have to attack the terrorism. India was forced to attack the terrorism. So that is something an ethical obligation to make sure that there is no future attack in India on such criteria or such range. So it consists of moral principles which are endorsed by of customary international law, and it reflects the international morality. There are many nations which follow the international morality, um, and the rules sanctions of international law has turned into international morality. So now let's look into the perspectives in the international ethics. Realistic perspective. See, it emphasizes the pursuit of national interest as the primary driver of state behavior in the international arena. See, this is something like we have to think of. See, here a country is seen as a rational actor, an important actor which actually wants to maximize their security and power in the world. For example, like peace, realist people think that peace can be maintained through like strategies like deterrence, military alliance, and balance of power. So, in the realistic perspective, for example, Trump is trying to balance the power by laying tariffs on other countries. He he wants to show that America is the best and no one can do it. In retaliation, China is also doing that because China wants to show its capabilities to the world. Military alliances, the NATO, it's a military alliance which shows that to the world that they are powerful. So that's an alliance. Next one is liberal perspective. See, it was championed by thinkers such as Immanuel Kant and Woodrow Wilson, which prioritizes values such as freedom, democracy, human rights in the international relations and ethics. Like actually, here liberals advocate for cooperation between different countries through different international organizations like the World Trade Organization, United Nations, ASEAN, Quad. So those things are all aspects of the liberal perspective. Next one is constructive perspective. The constructive perspective emphasizes the role of social norms, cultural practices, and shared identities in shaping state behavior and in and international relations. Like, it's nothing but one cultural practice which is in a country, or one shared identities which help in shaping the behavior of the state. Like India is a multicultural state, the identities are shared, different cultures are followed, so they all shape the behavior of a country, which eventually turns into the international relations. Next one is idealistic perspective. See, it's also known as normative or ethical perspective, where it emphasizes the importance of moral considerations and ethical principles in international relations. See, actually, idealist people usually believe in building a more peaceful and just world through international cooperation, diplomacy, and respect for human dignity. Like they always advocate for promotion of human rights, environmental protection, and the rule of law on the global stage. So that's a perspective which we must take into consideration. Now let us look into the different dimensions. So transfer of resources. So a transfer of resources must happen from rich countries to less developed countries. But actually, uh, in the reality, it usually goes from the poor countries to rich countries, and thus the rich countries become richer and poor countries become poorer. Like an example we can say is as um, richer countries taking the control of vital mineral resources of African countries, for example, USA, China, they all have control over the mineral resources of Africa. That's something we must not happen. Whereas the transfer of resources from rich countries to less developed nations should happen. Removing economic inequality. The removing economic exchange equalities like trade, commerce, finance between developed and underdeveloped nations. You should not like put high tariffs on underdeveloped nation. You being a developed nation, a country should not pose high tariffs on any country or underdeveloped country, and it should help in developing a country, which brings in equality, which removes the trade, which increases the financial transactions and benefits both the countries. Humanitarian assistance to countries suffering famine and misery. That's something humanitarian assistance. Like as we all know, India is a big country in doing humanitarian assistance. Like during the second wave of COVID-19, India got aid from over 40 nations, even from unexpected countries such as China and Uzbekistan. So that's something humanitarian assistance. You help them in the misery. Next one is intervention during genocide. Intervention in the states which carry out genocide, ethnic cleansing, or are on its own people. Like India's intervention in the East Pakistan in 1971 war, which eventually came with the formation of Bangladesh, and India's intervention in Sri Lanka during the genocide of Tamil people. That's intervention. Cosmopolitan approach of morality. Like adopting a cosmopolitan as opposed to national approach to morals. Like it's nothing like you are a global citizen, approaching that citizen rather than a national approach. Like India's ideals of Vasudeva Kudumbakam, which means the world, the entire world is my place. So that's something we should work into. Now let's look into the importance of international morality. Just world order. See, it promotes democratic world based on equality, where different developing nations will have equal representation in international global institutions. IMF, World Bank, UN, they all have representations in the global institutions, which can eventually help for their growth. Human rights. International morality protects human rights by curbing unnecessary wars and violent conflict and helps people suffering from conflicts. Example here given us, Syrian refugees were allowed in Europe when the Syrian civil war was there. Protecting international laws. Law becomes law when it is followed by people, otherwise it is not. Similarly, international morality is to oblige the international law on the basis is the basis of the enforcement. Like example, UN clause maritime boundary law. Like we have certain distance of a country. I mean, after the border of the country, uh, which like 12 nautical miles, something 12, which acts as the exclusive economic zone and stuff. So that's something protecting the environment, international law and following that. Cooperation and coordination. International morality plays a vital role in enforcing cooperation and coordination in difficult times. Like during COVID, India sent assistance to several nations under vaccine Maitri and Mission Sagar too. That's something India brought into consideration. Cooperation and coordination. Now we look into the failure of international morality. Interference in domestic politics. See, though it has been chartered in UN principles, but national interest has always prevailed over the international morality. Like, uh, it can be fake, but still, like Russia is known to have interfered in the presidential elections of in 2016 of USA. Also, India has been accused by Nepal to interfere in politics, particularly during the constitution drafting in 2015 in Nepal. So that's interference in their politics. Next one is violation of human rights. This is the most crucial principle, but in recent times, we have seen this human rights violation happening, like in the case of Rohingyas, Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province of China, Hong Kong issue. Um, so these are all certain parts of violation of human rights. Effect on the sovereignty and integrity of the nation. Like several disputes has risen. For example, Nepal, including Limpiadura, Kalpanian, Lipulek, in its map by the constitutional amendment without appropriate consultation, like clash of in Galwan Valley between China and India, um, Pangong Lake in the Ladakh regions. That's something which affects the effect on sovereignty and integrity of nation. Failure of cooperation and coordination. Like though cooperation and coordination can be largely seen between nations, but still due to peer pressure and domestic politics, national interest always prevails over. Um, like faction nationalism was seen from countries where the countries involved in pre-purchase agreements with companies developing agreement vaccines, which left the underprivileged countries the back foot with respect to accessibility and affordability. Like countries which had more money pre-purchased the vaccines even before it was created, which uh, did not allow the underprivileged countries to get that accessibility and affordability. Integration of world through globalization. This has resulted in complex and integrated supply chains. Like the countries are charting their own paths of self-reliance in the longer term and import diversification in medium terms, like Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan by India. Its integration of world through global change and developing the supply chain of India too. Environmental degradation. Issues such as climate change, deforestation, pollution, depletion of resources have all have profound ethical implications. See, the Amazon rainforest fires, which not only threatens the biodiversity but also exacerbate the climate change and also impacts the indigenous community, which is the failure of the international morality. Moving on to that, now let's look into the examples of India's morality in the international arena. Non alignment. Indian, after independence, did not align with any superpowers because as the Cold War was there, which was divided into bloc which was led by Russia and bloc which was led by America. And India followed the path of morality and non-interference, which led to creation of NAM, non-alignment movement, support against colonialism. Like it provided diplomatics and economics and moral support for the struggle against colonialism, racialism, and even apartheid, which had occurred in South Africa. Not only in South Africa, India has helped or supported against the colonialism in many countries after it gained independence from British. Non-violence. See, non-violence in the quest for nuclear disarmament also is the first commitment towards no first use policy. So India has nuclear weapons, but it's no first use policy. It's a commitment toward working on the morality in the stages of international arena. Punch Shield Treaty. See, it governs India's conduct in international relations. Like, it consists of 5 principles for peaceful coexistence between nations or for governing relations between states. It was this treaty acts very important. And finally, is the Vaccine Maitri program, which was humanitarian initiative undertaken by the Indian government to provide COVID-19 vaccines around the world. Lot of countries benefited from this program, Maitri and Mission Sagar 2 program. That's few examples where India's morality in international arena is seen, and because of these things, India is respected in the international standard at the highest part. Like, India is respected to very high condition status in the international arena because of its responsibility in the international arena. Now let's look into the way forward. Equitable development. International communities and nations should push forward for equitable development and should work on removing the north-south divide. Like, it's like we all know that north-south divide is nothing but the nations which are above north, above equator, north, and below equator, north-south. So that divide is there, which must be eradicated. Obligation to international treaties. Nations should create a peer pressure on nations who are not following the international treaties and laws. Yes, we must force the nations to follow the laws and the treaties who are not following this. Respect human rights. Every nation should respect the human rights and also help other nations who are in crisis on the humanitarian grounds. Yes, refugee crisis happens in Syria and Afghanistan in the recent past, but countries should help and give the respect to the human rights. Enforce peace and not war. Nations should keep the thought of war at bay and help each other maintain peace in the nation. This should be done by sharing information. Like, of course, enforcing peace is very much important, but my personal opinion, sometimes war is needed. Like what we saw in the Operation Sindur. After that heavy terrorist attack, India must retaliate. India should retaliate in such a way that Pakistan does not think of even attacking India again. The terrorists do not think of even attacking India, and that's something we should do it. Nation should always keep the war at the highest chance possible. I mean, keep peace as the highest chance possible, and keep the war out as far away from the main thing. But when there is no other choice, we cannot ignore, and it will happen. It has to happen. Now let's look into the international funding. See, as we all know, the world today has become a hyper-connected global village, and this closeness has integrated the vulnerabilities of the individual country with that of others. Like very advanced countries, international institutions, all considered it their moral responsibility to help the underdeveloped and undeveloped countries. Okay, that's good. However, several issues arise due to such funding. Erodes sovereignty. Like, any help from outside comes with certain preconditions attached to it, like the influence in economic, social, and political decision making, where the nation can no longer make it free decision. Like the IMF bailout in 1991 forced India to carry out the LPG reforms. Next one is philanthropic colonialism. Many times, foreign funding is used as a foothold to exert influence and increase the presence in the host nation. Like the funding of China in Pakistan, the One Belt One Road initiative has trapped Pakistan in debt. So that is philanthropic colonialism, which happens in these days. Next one is religion conversions. Sometimes big parts of foreign funding made in the name of humanitarian projects are diverted to religious conversions where poor people are coerced to convert their religion. Like Dr. Zakir Naik, who received huge funding from Arab nations, is being currently investigated under this aspect. Encourage sensational flames. A lot of times, in view of humanitarian aid, funds are diverted to fund sensational movements like foreign funding from certain nations, like we can also say Canada, uh, to encourage the Khalistan movement in India. So that's encouraging the sensational flames. Political bias in aid allocation. The practice of extending aid to politically aligned parties in recipient nations even continue today. Like France actually sends most of its aid to former colonies, and the US provides aid to Israel. So these allocations are often powerful tools for maintaining the strategic interest of the donor country, the recipient country. Here we can also say one more thing, like China provides aid to Pakistan to maintain its uh, stronghold in Pakistan, and make sure that India doesn't uh, settle a bit and keep creating problem. That is something, a political bias in aid allocation. So that's something we all should deal it. See, though foreign funding is an important resource for many humanitarian development projects all through the world, but we should also know that there is a chance of potential misuse. Like as Kautilya in Arthashastra says, best strategy to crumble an enemy revolt is to cut off its funding. So this is something we all should know about. Like hope you guys understood today's topic on international relations and funding. Do comment on your doubts and we will resume with the next lecture soon. Thank you.